Hello, hello. Chris here with another episode of the Make It podcast. And I'm here with my esteemed guest, Dr. Christian Gregory, back again on the podcast. And of course, I've got my partner in podcasting, Nicholas Buggs. Nick, Christian, say hello.
Hello, hello, hello. Such a pleasure to be back and join you, gentlemen. Make it. So let's make it.
Yeah, man, let's do it big. It's funny. I had to adjust. I'm like, hold on a second, let me adjust my earpiece. Chris came in hot on that hello, hello. I was like, oh man, he got all close to me, you know.
It's a warning. It's a warning. This show, the show's about to be hot. We're coming.
That's right.
Fire, lots of information. So have your notepads out, folks.
No, for sure, man. That's how we drop it. That's how Christian drops it. And it's funny, man. When Chris came hot in my ear, I was thinking like it took me way back, like
what did you just say?
It's like, listen, you came in hot in my ear.
Hot in your ear?
I said you came in hot. Cut it out.
Oh, okay.
So
Jesus Christ, exactly. We just got started.
Exactly.
Calm down.
So listen, it reminded me of back in the day. You know, when you go to the clubs and you're hanging out with your people, and the place is just way too loud. So you got to get real close to each other. Mm-hmm. And that's what it reminded me of, like Chris talking in my ear, like, yo, man, what we going to do next? Like, where we going to go next? I'm like, bro, you don't have to talk that loud. You just got to talk close, you know? So
it is crazy.
Gave me the vibes, man.
I do this hello on these like audio clips, Christian, like that I have to do like behind the scenes. And I really don't know why I cannot modulate that hello. I can't make it. I like every time I do these recordings, it shows up like in the, I guess like in the audio file where it's like, boom, you clipped right there. Well, I always have the compressor on. So it never actually like distorts, but it clips. And it's like, hello. And it's like something about it.
You're just excited.
Like I have to, it's like I've mentioned before, it's like Mariah Carey's hand when she does a run, she has to do this. Like she can't do like that. The run won't work if she goes down.
We'll have to work on some diaphragm controls.
Diaphragm control, microphone distance control, Christian. Yeah, like, hello, Chris here.
You're right.
With another episode.
Or we're going to have to get a master recording of it and just reuse it.
Yes, I had Kate just put it in. Or I could do ASMR version. Hello.
You have options. Kids, no question about the fact that you have options.
Yeah, that's right.
Kids love that stuff. I can't stand it. Now, Christian, it's been a while. I don't even remember. Yep. Were you on? I'm in a COVID, like a COVID blur here. Like was it? I always think things happened a year ago that happened 3 years ago.
I think it was during COVID. I think it. During COVID, such a loose statement because in a sense we're still all impacted by the emotional kind of drain of it all. But it has to be well over a year ago. Yeah, well over a year ago.
Let's see if producer Joe or Paul Bear can find that for us. But it's been a while, but it feels like close.
Yesterday.
Like we stay close.
We're picking up where we left off.
That's right.
Yeah, and I was sort of not tortured, but I think that's the wrong word. But I had been bothered by the idea of not being able to ask you a particular question in that conversation. And I've been waiting all this time to ask the question because there are going to be people who know you well and have seen you all around the internet and have seen your work and know about Dick, know about your dad. And then there will be people who are net new to you. And so for those people who are net new to Christian, he is so well-rounded and has already wisdom beyond his age and is someone who is like big brother quality. And I'm saying that in all sincerity. And I was wondering, how was it possible for you? Because I'm watching these documentaries. We're in the movie industry. We see what happens to the children of famous men and women. How did you pull this off? How did you grow up to be so well-rounded and not just you, I mean, your siblings, like, can you speak a little bit to how you just for lack of a better way to put it, how you turned out to be so normal?
Yeah, and I want to jump in on that real quick, Christian.
Please.
I think the other thing that Chris and I were commenting about this before, and there's a certain sense of course, like you said, celebrity, but your dad gave his life to the world, right? I mean, it's a little bit, it's elevated even beyond the celebrity, right? He gave his life to the world.
100%.
And I think that's Chris's thing is like, what was left to give to you and the other kids? And what was the support system like to fill the gap that we believe must have been there to some degree, right? So how did the family, how did everyone else kind of rally around you to bring each of you up to where you are right now?
Great question. And Chris and Nick, I can't go by without first saying thank you, because that was incredibly kind and gracious. And the the smoothest pebbles in the shore are the ones that have had the most friction on them. And so part of that smoothness, and it's not a facade, it's at my core who I am, but it's from life. So yes, my dad, incredibly successful, wealthy beyond measure as he raised us, but he made it very clear financial wealth is the least important. It's a must because you have to be able to provide for your family and take care of your family. But he taught us not by talking about true wealth, but by, being an example. And I say my mom, I say my dad, I mean my dad and my mom. It was we're a very tight knit family. And it's so interesting because 25 years as a chiropractor in Washington, D.C., I had so many intelligent patients. Most of my patients had 1 or 2 graduate level degrees just from the region in DC where my practice was. And I always, when they lost a parent, there was always the disharmony. It was always the challenging, not just the personal grief, but how it impacts the family unit. And my family certainly is an example of that, because we have different relations. I used to always say in the last 5 or so years of my dad's life, when living had clearly become more challenging for him, no country for old legends. And so America's tough on old people as it is, whether they're taking too long at the ATM machine in front of us or whether they're taking too long at the green light to go. We're a very impatient society, but that's part of our greatness too. That's part of what makes us so kind of fast tempoed and quick to figure out and find a solution. But watching my dad and then watching my siblings and my mom after my dad transitioned, and it was clearly all the seeds he had planted, because all 10 of us Gregory children, I'm going to go ahead and say it, we're wildly different, yet so unique and similar. But you spend a day with any of the 10 of us, we're very different people. And that's the beauty. I mean, that's the beauty of evolution. That's the beauty of, genetics. So you're not going to get the same combination, same mother, same father. Genetics are still different. Your genetic parental maternal contributions are the same, but what we become is wildly different. So to answer your question, Nick and Chris, I'd say it was the perfect expression of nature and nurture. My parents had figured, and I'm number 8, so they had a lot to practice on. If my dad was here, he would have a lot of colorful things to say about some of the ones older than me. But I'm not that tough love with them. That's not my job as one of the babies in the family. But we realized very quick, I'll say that once the referees are gone, meaning the parents, once the parents are gone, life changes. And so my mom's still alive and well, but she's definitely enjoying her second childhood. As you know, I used to represent Miss Cicely Tyson for quite some time, and she would frequently say, once an adult, twice a child. That's a beautiful thing. And so if we have the opportunity and our folks live long enough, we'll have the opportunity to be caregivers to them like they were to us. And part of that pivot and that shift is really part of the comfort, the blanket that kind of comforts us after we lose our parents, being able to do that role reversal. And so with my dad, I was the person that was, and what a blessing. And I know definitively it helped me more than my siblings with the healing trajectory after losing him, because there was literally no stone left unturned. A lot of people say, I wish I could have had one more conversation with Dick Gregory, or during COVID, someone could say, I wonder what, what Dick Gregory said. Well, if you wonder that, you haven't been listening, because the man had been talking for 60 years, like we're doing now, copious recordings that you can extract from what he said, literally his opinion on everything. And I don't want to jump ahead of the conversation, but that's part of the love I have for AI. AI is our ancestors. It's everyone that's been here before. AI is not jumping quantum leaps into the future and coming back with stuff. it's coming from the present and our history. So a lot of now we can't allow it like anything else to take over. And, it's a very dear friend of the Gregory family's. I won't mention his name, but probably about 10 airports in the United States, he ran and operated all of the payphones. And when you don't see that pivot coming of a new technology, whenever there's a new technology, there's people who are going to feel scorned and burned. And I love technology. I'm certain of the fact that you look as storytellers, how that technology has gone from, folks writing on cave drawings, which we're kind of back to now with emojis. So that full circle of that, and say, we're still telling stories. And so probably in 4 emojis, I could tell you if you see, a tsunami wave pull back from the shore, to run. About 4 emojis, I could tell you that story. And that's what they did on cave walls. So that was 45,000 years ago. And there's still things we can extract from that 5,000 years ago, since modern human, man, woman, have been keeping written records. And for some reason, we all support and love an industry that seems to be obsessed with the last 400 years without saying, wait a minute, there's greatness on both sides of that spectrum. And those are the stories that, Dick Gregory Media, the company my dad and I formed, we had made a commitment to each other that we weren't going to see any more slave films after Django, because we both were thrilled beyond measure by Django. I must confess, I did see, and I don't even remember what it was, but it reinstilled to me that I should have listened to what Pop said and stopped at that, because our culture is so much deeper than that and longer. I mean, there's 4,500 years that we just throw out the window to pick up at 400 years ago. So all of that to say, as storytellers, we have an opportunity to really set the bar. And I've been saying this a lot lately. Storytelling is a survival technique. We learn from these stories. It's not just entertainment. And so my dad, as an entertainer, civil rights activist, human rights activist, environmentalist, made it very clear to us that it's much bigger than you. And he would always say, average folks begin life at 21, great folks begin life at 50. And what he meant by that, his measure of greatness, is how much service. And he really felt that you really weren't, and I can attest to this, properly trained or qualified to really serve in a meaningful way until you've seen some things. So for so many of us, we form our opinion at 21, 25. We don't even know what, just because we can drive and we're 18, these are just random things that folks are. My 18 is someone else's 22. These are just norms, not normal. Yeah. And so it really took a lot of the pressure off of us Gregory's to not quickly get through school, quickly start a profession, quickly get married and have children. All of that societal pressure, we had the luxury of going up without that on us. And I think it eased the celebrity spotlight that many other celebrity families have not fared so well. And so many of them were friends of ours. Many of them are friends of ours. And so, drugs and alcohol and mental health, these are things that have touched our family. It's just, they're things that they touch every family. And part of my dad's, the beauty of him, he's brutally honest. So as my dad was getting older and was having problems with incontinence, and he said, hey, Doc, I have to keep going to the bathroom. I said, everything has a shelf life, Pop. And I think I was a little dismissive. And I realized that was the wrong response. And I said, you can be the healthiest person in the world, but your kidneys, your bladder, it's all cumulative. It's how you treated them over your lifetime of when stuff stops, functioning the way you would like it to. And so I thought about it heavy that night and realized that was not a Dick Gregory-like response I gave Dick Gregory. So the next day when he came into my office, I said, hey, Pop, you know what? I gave the wrong kind of quick, rapid answer without really taking the time and using the wisdom that you had raised us on. I said, Pop, it's important to realize that, astronauts, extreme sports and distance runners and cyclists, NASCAR drivers, all of them wear adult supports to help them with this. And because I went into it that way, into a story of it's normal, and the interesting thing, he didn't really seem to be receiving it well. My dad was very proud of his Costco's card. So, unbeknownst to me, he had gone to Costco's and he came back with the world's largest. I want to call it a pallet. There was so many Depends. That I said, okay, Pops, let's listen. And I said, I thought it, other than the fact that he couldn't close the trunk and everyone would know, I said, well, little PR, little secret. He performed at the Baltimore Comedy Club 2 days later and unbuckled his pants and pulled them down to his waist to show the whole crowd he was wearing a Depends.
Oh, wow.
It shows. So the Gregories are brutally honest. One of the things that keep us from hiding from shame is being honest about things and having pride in that honesty of just who we are. And so I know that's a very long response to a question of what makes us so kind of, we know it's okay to cry. We know it's okay to be sad. Life is a continuum. It's a cycle. There's an ebb and flow to it. And I've said this in many of the documentaries. In order to understand happiness, you have to experience sadness. To appreciate health, you have to have known sickness. If you've always been happy and always been healthy, you're going to be in for a world of hurt the first time you get introduced to that other side of the spectrum. So it's that balance and being equally as happy when you're down as you are when you were up. And so,
yeah, but I think Dick was also one of the things I was going to say that I think that, that I remember of him that is just, I think it permeates everything, but it was that he was uncompromising in his principles. And I think that's a key factor as well, because I think that's what we consider with celebrity. We think of Hollywood, we think of this, we actually do think about scruples. Right. And we think about principles and we think about compromise because, well, how did that person get that job? Or how did they get this? Or how did they get that? And what were they willing to do to get, the acting role in that? So we hear a lot about that. We don't get the firsthand, but I know some of us do. I know you have some relationships with people in those positions.
And you see it. You see
yes, exactly. So, but I think that was the key with Dick. He was like, no. Like the whole Nike commercial thing. I don't want to take these people's money. If you force me to, I'll take a penny. But besides that, I am sticking exactly $1. I will stick to my guns. And I think that's it. I think that is what rubbed off on likely the entire family. It says, no, we as a family, we've got principles. We have belief system, and we're sticking by it.
I think it's profoundly important to point out that the economic abundance. At that point, my dad was profoundly wealthy. He was able to pick up the whole family from downtown Chicago, Illinois, and relocate us to a 3,000-acre pristine farm out in the middle of kind of nowhere in Plymouth, Massachusetts. You see, Dave Chappelle has done something very similar. Isolating, now it'd be even harder because of social media, and we didn't have any of that. We didn't have any TV on the farm. It was just, 3,000 acres of us. And so that was profoundly important. And I don't want to make it seem like, every family that was an option for. Due to my dad's, economic abundance at the height of his career, he was able to do that. And that was, I can look right now and know for a fact that was other than summers leaving as a family to go down south and be part of the civil rights movement and seeing the ugliness of the world, we had the safety blanket of knowing we were always going to come back to that nucleus, that home base that was so comforting, and there were folks of all hues that were there. So it was almost like we were living on that mountaintop Dr. King was talking about. We were seeing folks. I mean, there were a lot of folks that worked for us Gregory's. We didn't call them work, but a lot of them didn't look like us, and we didn't talk down, we didn't treat them badly. And so it really gave you an opportunity to appreciate people for who and what they were. And it was it would be a unique study for someone to kind of look at the Gregory family, because it would be impossible to live in a vacuum like that now with technology. And so I look at folks with young kids now, and I just, I feel there's another front door in your home that you have to guard more so than your literal front door.
Man, it's a front door, it's a back door, it's a side door, it's a trap door.
You got your work cut out for you.
Yeah, exactly,
on top
man.
Of an open window. Like
it's crazy.
It's a few things. You mentioned like 8th in line of 10 siblings. What do you think Dick saw in you that made him want to run the business with you?
I don't have to think it, because he said it every time. Anytime you give him the opportunity to. So this is my chance to kind of, put my siblings in a headlock. My dad would always say, when he would come back from the road and come to the farm, he would always say, if there's so much as a single tool out of place, a lot of tools on the farm, I know exactly who did it, because Christian's the only one that does any work around here. And so from a young age, I ran the farm, even though, and so, I would have on some underoos and be outside, watching the workers cut down trees. And so I was using a chainsaw long before someone my age should have been using a chainsaw. I was operating a backhoe and bulldozer and front end loaders long before. I had my own business at 15 because I lied and used my brother Greg's ID and had an American Express card and had grown adults working for me. So it was just that I realized this, because I 100%, if you were, and my siblings will love to acknowledge this is true, if you were to give all of us Gregory's an IQ test, I wasn't the academic in the Gregory family, not at all. If anyone, most people that knew me as a kid, they were like, wow, he wildly, outgrew his, genetic limitations. I was not the academic one in the family, that's for certain. And I say this when I speak publicly, work ethic trumps intellect 10 to 1. If you're some of the smartest people in the world, and I'm not talking about my family here, some of the smartest people in the world may choose not to use that intellect. So you might as well not have it. So once you realize that the best tool you can ever have is a hunger to work. I'm proudly part of, reading a book probably about a month ago, the 5 a.m. Club. I'm a proud member of the 5 a.m. Club. I'm up emailing my general counsel for 3E Mission at 5 a.m., our CEO of our sales agency at 5 a.m. They all know we're up, and that's where my brain, that's where my creativity. So by the time most people are starting their day, I've already done so many of my creative things that when we jump on early calls, people are shocked. They think, well, wait, how do you already have? Because it's not my work nothing's for me at night. I'm typically, most nights, I'm in bed by 8:30, 9 o'clock, because my world is early morning. It's creativity. It's building and growing. It's writing. It's storytelling. There's stories that I worked on with my dad 10 years ago that are just now getting footing to become something. And that's as you're talking to other storytellers on this platform, with technology, the intellectual property that's on our devices is profound. I'm certain for many of us, it'll be worth more than the physical, tangible property that we own. May not be now, but once it catches up to it. So that's why it's profoundly important to share your passcodes with your loved ones. As we saw in that famous Apple case with a woman whose husband sadly passed away. Hundreds of thousands of dollars she spent suing Apple to try to get them to unlock her husband's iPad, where all of their family, and they wouldn't do it. And it's not because they're a big, mean, ugly company. It's that these things are built on precedence, and that it would have been unprecedented, and let them tell it they don't have the ability. They put safety measures in that even if they were to be served a federal warrant, they wouldn't be able to go in there and do it. So It's up to us to have the same type of language in our wills for tangible property. And I touched on this last time we were doing this podcast, as for our intellectual property. And there's a lot of platforms, since we discussed it then and now, there's a lot of platforms that help manage your access and passwords, so you can make sure that after you transition, what you want to fall into other hands will, and what you don't want. You make those decisions. You tick those boxes, because we keep a lot of vital things on I call it, so there's 6 lobes in the human brain. Our phones and devices, I consider our 7th. And I love our digital lobe. It's a major part of what we do. So when I'm a former high school math teacher, so I used to tell students all the time, hey, don't use your calculator. You won't always have it. Wow, was I wrong? So
right.
I always go back and apologize to them and say, not only do you not need it, all that random arithmetic and times tables. And we say, well, with these digital lobes, we're not remembering as much. I mean, who cares if you don't remember 19 phone numbers anymore? The things our brains are doing now are so much behind just kind of rogue, memorization. It's real processes where you can't help but to look at where the evolution of the human brain is now, because so much of the kind of mundane things we don't have to do anymore. There's no question about it. People will say, hey, we don't want to be cyborgs. We're afraid of AI. But then you get on the train in the morning on the metro and everyone's doing this with their phone. You are a cyborg. The new ball and chain is your arm and hand. I mean, it's all, there's folks in the movies who are looking at their device more than they're looking at the movie. So it's a real thing. We should embrace technology. You remember this when 5G came out, everyone was up in arms about 5G, not knowing 5G was in the trunk of their car, 5G was on the roof of their building, 5G, and now 4G, 5G, 6G, anything new is always the boogeyman. It seems to disproportionately impact certain communities. And I think it's important that we, those of us who are proud nerds, that we take the time and say, hey, wait a minute, like the evolutionary process is important that we realize what's happening. We learn to modulate dopamine because everyone's dopamine is being hijacked these days. But if you don't know what it is for it to be hijacked, you can't go on a dopamine fast and try to recalibrate, your neuron transmitters. It's just, there's so much there. So now that you don't have 19 phone numbers memorized, now you can start delving into some of these things that are really a lot more meaningful. Typically, my dad would always say the only thing good about the good old days is that they're gone. The evolution, the technology, the quality of life. I mean, when we were kids, probably every fourth car was a hoopty. You almost never see a hoopty anymore. You almost never see a car backfiring. America's a nation of abundance, and to not acknowledge that abundance, that doesn't mean we still can't do and should do better, but to not acknowledge that abundance and to not, pretty much everyone has a smartphone. They may not have the newest version, but that access to technology, I think, has been the biggest catalyst for moving towards equality.
Probably but listen, I got to jump in on that one too.
It's an essential purchase right now. Like, it's not even a thing. You have to get the phone.
Yeah. No, but listen, what I'm saying, when I want to jump in on that is the abundance is awesome, right? Yeah. But I think the thing that, from the old school, if I may, step in 1 foot into the old school, got 1 foot in the new school, the one thing that abundance gives for these kids that are coming up now is they have the expectation of abundance. And with the expectation of abundance, you don't necessarily have that ethic about, hey, I got this new thing and I really appreciate, right, what I got, right? Like the idea of going from the old school number 2 pencil to then getting the mechanical pencil, you know what I'm saying? I was like, oh man, this thing is amazing. I don't have to do this stuff. I don't have to sharpen these pencils anymore, right? It's kind of like what are now in the level of abundance, everything is already easy. And then you get that new thing. It's just easier. Like, it was never hard, right?
Yeah. The suicide rate now is significantly higher than it was then. So what seems easy, really, it's, you went from too little to too much. And
that's what I mean with the abundance.
That's our job as adults to calibrate our children's and our nieces and nephews' expectations. And so,
do you think it's moving too fast? Do you think, and that's the other thing, is it moving too fast? Like, one of the things you mentioned, like earlier when we were just getting set up, it's like, even now, even when you're talking about being out on the farm, right? You didn't have some of these distractions. And what we have now is we have an abundance of distractions. We have abundance of technology, abundance of
distraction.
Yeah, doors, windows, back doors, trap doors.
We know we're not going to get that genie back in the bottle. And here's a perfect example of what you're mentioning. When Henry Ford first invented the windshield washer, there was literally about to be an act of Congress to remove them, because so many people were driving into trees because that mechanism, that motion was, because nothing was mechanized back then. Right. So had we said, okay, this is evil, this is the devil, we'd have no Times Square. We'd have no ever. So the burden is on us as a society to calibrate, because you have 1,000 Twinkies in your pantry. If you can't control your children not to eat 1,000 of them, don't put them in there. Like, as adults, I always tell, now I don't have any children, but I have like 30. And so what I would always tell, like my partner, Dr. Banu, my chiropractic partner, I said, before you ever give your children a cell phone or an iPad or a computer, every night as rule, the devices charge in the parents' room. That's law. That's law. And if you start it that way, great. If you wait till they're 16 and try to change it, you got a runaway on your hand. It is. I mean, again, that's a drug. That's a neurotrend. That's dopamine. Parent against dopamine, they're going to lose every time. That's why they call it dope. You're going to lose every time. So you have to control and titrate that dopamine before it even gets there. So part of this is, we didn't just get here overnight. And so I look at my dad's wealth at that point. You couldn't look at any of us Gregorys and say, oh, those are Gregorys, because I can tell by the type of clothing they're wearing. My dad controlled that. He could have very easily went out, and I had my tennis shoes were the same as all my buddies' tennis shoes. And many times when I got things, they got things. And so I think as hard as it is, it's only hard if you let the genie with your children get all the way out of the bottle. And the moment you calibrate it and titrate it and let them know there's a different level of abundance that you have access to, and you need to be grateful. My dad's carbon credits, long before there were carbon credits, was taking all 10 of us little black Gregory children with big afros, pulling over his Rolls Royces, both of them with his friend drive, on the side of the road, and us picking up trash on the side of Massachusetts highways. That was his carbon offsets. It was us out there and saying, we didn't say, hey, I'm Dick Gregory's son. I'm just picking up trash. He was picking it up right alongside with us. So there was always that balance, and there was always that healthy respect that our parents, although we knew they loved us dearly, they were not our best friends. And what they said, man, now parenting's hard. And not even, as my dad would always say, Hitler had a mother and father at home. Don't put so much pressure on single home parents. Some of the greatest people we've ever known are the product of a single home parent. Just because, and again, I won't use my dad's colorful language, but most beep, 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 when they're home, they're still not home. So physically being home doesn't mean that you're physically present. My dad was gone a disproportionate amount of the time, out on the road and out part of the movement, and spent 6 months in an Iranian jail cell fighting to get the Iranian hostages back. And it just was, Pop's out saving the world. It wasn't but his values were still there. It wasn't because out of sight, out of mind. And so it is the quality time that we spend with each other, way more than quantity, that is the most. And especially when someone's a young pupil, you have a much greater possibility of change. I'm still, to this day, I'm using wisdom that I learned on the farm all this time later and applying it in a way that I think my dad always meant for it to be applied. I didn't realize I was applying it wrong for 3 decades. So learning is never, it's a
never ending story.
Storytelling.
Yep. You mentioned Martin. You mentioned so many things. I could run down, just write notes on everything. By the way, best place to leave your password is in your living will. And then you don't have to worry about will somebody find it? You didn't hide it in a book. You didn't hand it over on a piece of paper. Just put it in that living will, and then it kind of sits there. But as you change it, you do have the burden of updating. But it's a great idea. But I heard you mention Martin Luther King, and one thing me and Nick have talked about on this podcast a few times is sort of this first, just the shunning of colorblindness that Dr. Martin Luther King talked about, but then also this sort of subtle disrespect that's seemingly becoming okay now, where I hear these quote unquote Black leaders get on shows and podcasts that are on one hand advocating for the future of Black culture and Black America, but on the other hand saying things like Martin King, calling him Martin King, then these are young people, as if they were with him in the jail cell or something. Martin King, come on. When I grew up, there used to be reverence sort of around his name, especially if you didn't know him.
Yeah. I think that's part of, and we see this in one of the public policy groups that I work with a lot here in DC, the Raven Group. One of the workers there had mentioned to me, said, it's to the point that they're digging up civil rights icons just to re-lynch them. And it was, and that wasn't a white or Black thing. That was everyone. That's so the problem with making someone celebrity or who larger than life is at some point the fact that they all are very human is going to catch up with that. And so I always try my best not to put people, I put certain actions people do up on a pedestal, but not to put the individual on a pedestal, because you're setting yourself up for disappointment. My dad lived to be 84. So depending on if you knew him at 20, 30, 40, 50, was a very different person. So, and frequently I talk about this. Before my dad and Malcolm X became dear friends, and they were dear friends for the majority of their lifetime, Malcolm X, not knowing Dick Gregory, said, "I'm tired of these entertainers out here acting like they speak for the Black folks, they speak for the civil rights movement," and he referred to Dick Gregory as a clown.
Mm.
There's people on social media that love to reference that way more than all of the relation. I mean, some of the biggest fights I've ever had in my life in grade school went on to be my best friends. So if we only focus on the conflict and not focus what came out of that conflict. And so again, this was my dad at the height of his career. Malcolm X called him shortly after that, and they were all in Chicago. And my dad immediately recognized, and we put this in the book, recognized Malcolm's voice, and they had a beautiful conversation. And he said, "Dick, why don't you come down to the mosque?" In which would have been
is this the Essential Dick Gregory, by the way? Is that the
in the Essential Dick Gregory? We have a whole section on Martin, Malcolm, and Medgar. And this is my dad in his own voice. I edited that project, but it's all from audio transcripts. So this is Dick Gregory in his own voice at various different times in his life.
Pick that up wherever you purchase books.
Yes, absolutely.
Should be on our Nick and Chris's all-time favorite books lists soon.
Yep. Didn't know that. Bravo.
On bookshop.org, Black-owned, female-owned, bookshop.org. Go pick up the book there.
Christian, send me all of that. Send me all of that, because I want to actually put that out as well, Chris. And so Malcolm X invited him to the mosque, and most entertainers would not be seen anywhere near a mosque in the 60s, because they would immediately been labeled as, rebellious and activists. And so my dad said, "Send a car." And so Malcolm hung up the phone, called him back about 5 minutes later, like, "Dick, you're lying. As big as you are right now, you can't come here." And there's a very famous picture of my dad and the head of security at the Chicago Mosque holding up the final call, posing for the press, because they called a press conference. This was the height of my dad's career. And ever since that moment, now, Malcolm was not there because there was already some tension unrelated to Dick Gregory within the Fruit of Islam, within the Nation of Islam, of why they swapped out and had the head of security there. But there was a fearlessness there's a fine line between reckless and fearless. And Dick Gregory was definitely fearless. He came from nothing. And so he was never afraid to go back to what he knew. And I would argue that he was more comfortable there. The quicker I call my dad, a spiritual trillionaire. He was a conduit for money. It just ran through him because he had nowhere he wanted to deposit it, because the thought of depositing money was so off-putting for him, knowing there were people who were struggling, that it just flowed through. There's a lot of millionaires and multimillionaires in this country and abroad because of Dick Gregory's love for humanity. Pat Armstrong Williams is on the record. His first $1 million that Armstrong Williams made was selling Dick Gregory's Bahamian Diet. So there's a lot. My dad could have sold that company for $32 million in the 80s. That was a lot of money, but they would have put all of the multi-level, the black folks my dad brought on as multi-level employees, would have put all of them, BeachNet was the company, would have put all of them out of business. And my dad said, no, he wound up losing the company a year later. So may have been a better move for him to have taken that $32 million and to have employed all those people. But to the point you made earlier, Nick, he never compromised his morals. And so it just was. And whenever someone has a Dick Gregory story, I never have to be, what a blessing to be the child of a celebrity and not have to have my antennas go up like, oh God, what is this person going to say? The amount of love, the amount of stories. I mean, we're going on 6 years since my dad passed, and I'm still bumping into people and everyone has a Dick Gregory story. I mean, it's the folks you least expect to have a Dick Gregory story that have some of the most meaningful stories. And it just is, he touched a lot of people while he was here. And as Gregory children and as a family, our job and our desire has never been to fill his shoes. It's been to keep his shoes clean and out there for the world to see as a beacon of hope and as an example for what sacrifice joyous sacrifice, not hate-filled sacrifice, but loving sacrifice, and sacrificing because that's where your passion and happiness is. On my dad's tombstone, we said one of his more favorite quotes, to talk about what true happiness comes from doing things for other people. And
wait. And listen. So I respect that, and I appreciate that, and I love that. But I'm gonna tell you that there's actually one word that you all need to inscribe on the other side of that tombstone. Okay, you ready?
There's still room.
I know. Wait. You ready for it? The word is, huh?
Yeah. Now, even that, when he was 20, it was a much softer, huh? It was a and then that evolution, that hard, descriptive punctuation, like that. I see it on pens, and I see it, and Dick Gregory's life is a perfect example of the life cycle. And I say No Country for Old Legends, because there's people that gravitate to that side without realizing the beauty that led up to that, which made that side so beautiful. Because you'll hear him on some of his more fiery social media clips, and immediately once he's done laying into you, well, I still have hope for you. I still love you, brother. There's love that's there. And so it's that and I've been with him when he's done those interviews, and I've been with him when he's done 60 Minutes and CBS Sunday Morning News. It's not a show for certain folks. That's what everyone got. Pop had one gear, and that one gear, no matter who was in the room, who was on the other side of the camera, he was consistent with his messaging. And it's such a beautiful thing to now be finding so many of these archival clips, and just finding different ways that he was saying the same thing 40 years ago. It continues to be a joy to connect all these dots after the fact.
Yeah, and those dots keep connecting now, right, Chris? I mean, you could literally just pick up a video and watch it and be like, man, everything he said came true, and man, everything he said applies now, and man, but yeah, go ahead, Chris. It's awesome.
We got to hop into a culture check, but I will say this.
Yeah.
He's unusual. Dick Gregory was an unusual person in the sense that, I've just never experienced this before in my life. I'm at a banking function that my banking buddy has invited me to. Shout out to Jeff Magruder. Shout out to Citizens Bank, oldest black-owned bank in the country. Okay. I'm at this fundraiser, beautiful room, beautiful people, and I'm doing my networking thing, right? Someone else told me, it was Mark Jackson, producer Mark Jackson. I was talking to him last night, Nick, and he's like, you're gonna you've never met a stranger. That's what he said. And so I was doing my thing, never met a stranger, sit down with this guy from Georgia, never met him before. We spark up a conversation. Somehow Dick comes up. I don't know how. I can't even remember. This is like a long time ago. He says, Dick Gregory. I said, yeah. So he says, hold on. He stands up. It's a large guy. Stands up, pulls out his wallet. He has a picture of him and Dick Gregory. This is a grown man. This man is 60. And he has a picture of him and Dick Gregory in his wallet. I've just never seen anything like it.
How about that? And I mean,
he's carrying it around a picture like a young boy that has carried around the picture of his father. He
like
has
a baseball card.
He was
right.
It doesn't happen.
The reason they call him Baba, he's a father to a nation, a father to a lot of people, and not instead of their father, but along with their father. And that's the whole "it takes a village." And he was the living embodiment of "it takes a village." He was that. He was that village elder.
Yeah, I've just never seen. I just have to say, I just never seen anything like it, and he's unusual in the very, very, very best way. So again, for more of those stories, The Essential Dick Gregory, you can get that on Amazon. But if you want to help us out and do a little better thing, you can get it at bookshop.org.
Let's do it.
We'll have a link in the show notes for Chris and Nick's all-time fave books. Nick, why don't you hit us with a culture check?
I think
culture, or maybe you should say.
Well, I mean, I think it's a. Well, I always say that it's a good time for culture check.
Always.
Gotta hit you with it. Okay. All right. Here's the deal. So, and I'm going to read a little bit of this, what I have here in my notes. But so for us, by us, right? So anybody who's, again, I mean, I guess they're still doing their thing, but there was a time when they didn't exist, and we all knew it. We all knew it as FUBU, right? That was the gear. People rocking the FUBU gear, right? That was the thing, but it's for us, by us. But I was reading recently that they got a huge content deal, and I say huge, it's a $450 million content deal with Pantheon Studios, a subsidiary of Eudora Financial, to make diverse content. I was like, oh man, diverse content, for this, for the folks, for us, by us, who look like me. I was like, man, Chris, like, we should find out about this. $450 million of content. We make content. Maybe we can be a part of this thing, right? I was like, that's awesome. So let me do some research. So I do a little research. I'm like, okay, well, what's For Us, By Us Studios doing? Oh, I find out that they do the For Us, By Us network, and they produce and distribute their stuff on YouTube. I was like, oh, okay, cool. I can do my little reconnaissance. I get out there and I get on YouTube. I'm doing my reconnaissance. I open up For Us, By Us network, and I say, booty, 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 booty everywhere. I'm like, man, what is happening? Why is this girl's twerking booty in my face? Why do I see something that says, have you ever tried DP? And this girl's mouth wide open. What am I seeing right now?
Yeah.
This is For Us, By Us. And my first thing was like, I don't know who us are, right? Because that's not for me. I don't know what that is. So the culture check here is there this conversation happening, maybe behind the scenes, about what we are supposed to like at large, right? Is there one thing that we like? Is it that we like booty, booty, booty and hip hop rap? Like, that's all black people fit into this microcosm of, what was it, Chris? They call it
they had a show, chicks. Real Side Chicks of LA.
Real Side Chicks of LA. I'm like, yo. So listen,
first thing I thought was, this is like a cadre of oath breakers. Yeah, if you're the side chick, you're not supposed to have a show because you have a big secret.
Right. So but listen, so this is what I'm saying. This is the question that I'm really asking. This is the culture check, which is, for us, by us. Who are we? Who is it? Because it's not me.
So first, I'd like to say I didn't know this show was NC-17. Thank you, Nick.
No problem. NSFW.
You came at us fast and furious.
Yes, sir.
So I'm guilty as charged. I did have multiple pairs of FUBU pants that were about yay wide.
Of course.
That was,
you gotta get that jacket through that puffy coat.
And even back then,
well, LL was promoting it too. It was dope.
Yep.
Yeah, no, there's no question. It's the who is us, and that is, that's for us to decide. So right. I remember when it was a whole movement of, are we black? Are we African American? It was a small group of folks that went to the room and made that decision. There were a lot of folks that thought, I've never been to Africa. I don't even understand Africa. I know my genes may be from there, but whatever their case, there should never be, one. We're not a monolithic, and there should never be one group of people. So I'm assuming that's just a name, and now I would be more concerned. I'm not going to be outraged at who's financing that. Like, those are the people those of us that really have an opportunity to impact. And part of what I do with my company is raise those counter funds, because the day and age of just showing up with a sign outside of the studio is not as effective. It was a very effective then, but now we have the resources to show who us plural are, like the multitude across the diaspora. Like, this is us, and that's infinite. That's a fluid thing, and it's changing in real time. And that day, and those who have the desire to kind of pigeonhole and hold a entire culture as one thing. First, I'm pretty active on in digital spheres. I never heard of that, so which is a beautiful thing because now I'm going to unhear of it. But there's so much out there, and it's what we channel and what we use our platforms to do. And that sounds like a lot of money that you just mentioned.
So that's what I'm. So that's what I'm saying, and that motive, right? But that's what I mean is that I had never heard of it either. And so that worked for me, right? I never heard of this, and that's for a smaller population, and that's fine. But what drew my attention,
you went and looked at it and came right out. You'll never go back again.
I know, but listen, what I'm saying is that drew the attention of someone, an entity willing to put $450 million behind what appears to be this content. Now, look, they could change the whole thing up. They could flip the script and they could say, you know what? That was just a test case to show you that we could produce something. Maybe that was it. And maybe behind the scenes, the new thing is maybe it will be more broad and
there's a lot of stuff in development right now.
Exactly, that we don't know about. And maybe I'm giving them a bad rap based off of the 20-year-old Dick instead of the 30-year-old Dick. But that's what I'm saying. Like,
I wouldn't say so at all. I remember when, in the 80s, when hip hop was De La Soul, it was so Queen Latifah, and that wasn't soft. It was some of the most beautiful music. And I saw with my own eyes what others outside of the culture, where they invested their money and hijacked that movement. So the rewind 30 years ago, the same thing happened. There's nothing new under the sun. It's just
agreed.
Platforms. So now it doesn't have to be, CDs and cassettes we're buying. Now it moves on to this next evolution. I've said this, maybe even on this podcast before, during the Black Lives Matter movement, BLM Baltimore was legitimately being run by Russian bots. There was when finally all of the folks showing up at the rally finally said, "Hey, who's putting this together? Who's got us all in this intersection?" At the same time, they were able to deduct there was no leadership. It was Russian bots that were, and just as easy as it could be Russian bots, it could be U.S. bots. It could be the fact that we don't dig a little, like you dug a little. You went and looked. The fact in this day, digging a little isn't taking a road trip, isn't just picking up your device and doing 2 minutes of due diligence to say, I don't want anything about, and I want to make sure that my children don't stumble upon it, because you can't, once you tell them, they're going to be laser focused to find it. So as parents, we have to stay so far out in front of the technology. The largest group of disabled Americans within the next 5 to 10 years are going to be folks as young as 50, and it's going to be the digitally disabled folks that can't figure out how to unlock their car door, put their car into drive, because they say, I don't care about this technology. I miss the good old days. And now there's not a single physical key in the world, and they're still waiting for one. And so that's and far too long, it disproportionately impacts our community. There's a lot of well-financed distractions.
There you go. And that's my concern.
Recalibrate. We're not going to everybody. We're not going to get
so let me ask this, and this is for you and for Chris, of course. Mm-hmm. But I love the idea of the countermeasures like that you mentioned. You raise counter capital, you do something different. Is there or should there be opportunities to now have conversations with these people who are, putting this kind of money out and FUBU and say, hey, I love the fact that you got these funds. I love that these funds are coming over to people who look like us. Hey, let's partner a little bit, right? I know you got a whole thing you want to do in this world, but it looks like you might have a little change in your pockets to also do some other things that might look like this. What do you think about that? Do you think that that's like, should we contact them and be like, hey, we got something that we're doing that is for us, by us? It just doesn't look like that.
Money has agendas. So every dollar you spend is a vote. And that's their money too. They're voting with their money. And if they don't like what's happening, that's the reason I never get caught up and no disrespect to if right now the three of us decided to form our own, make it movement. And, we raise $1 million. Well, we get a new office. We start hiring staff. We got a couple company cars. We're doing what corporate folks do. Then that money dries up. Now we're desperate. Now we're taking money from whoever it'll give it to us. You look at and I have nothing against the United Black College Fund, but virtually all of their money comes from the one surviving Koch brother and Republican donors. That's where most of, because it's either, if our option, egos are in there, hey, we're going to acknowledge we fail and close our doors, or we're going to get our money from wherever the money, where you get your money sets your agenda. And it's going to allow your agenda to still be loosely what your agenda should be, but they're going to make sure you don't go certain places. If you look at the animal rights activists, you look at, sorry, PETA, but so many of these groups that they don't dig deep enough. They do just enough work to say they're doing the work. And they say, well, why wouldn't you call out? We know who's behind this. Why? Oh, that's who's funding them. You have to look at where the funding's coming from. And since we're Americans, we're emotional. So we saw George Floyd, everyone put money in. Oh, well, that's not sustainable. That's not we're not going to be that emotional that 10 years later, we're still giving $10,000 towards George Floyd, because we've moved on to what's next in about, a couple nanoseconds. What the average American, and when you're running a business based solely on emotions, it's not a business model. It's a momentary blip on the radar screen that you try to turn into a business. So it seems like every time I turn on something, they're talking about, oh, well, the BLM, they bought themselves a house, this. They're like, great for them. Like it wasn't a business. Like it wasn't a business.
Right.
And they were like, she hired her brother as chief of staff. Who else was she going to like? It wasn't like these were like, folks that left IBM to go and run this. Like when my dad would always say, when people would be hard on professional athletes who lose all their money, it's like, there's people that have PhDs in finance that lose their money. Keeping money's hard. We shouldn't make fun of them. We should try to do things while they're ascending. The average athlete plays for 4 to 5 years. If you take the most money we're ever going to make in our lifetime and give it to us for just 4 years with nothing else the rest of our life, the amount of fiscal management that takes, it's impossible. Right. So we're setting these folks up to begin with. But I don't want to not answer your question, Nick. Yes, we have to spend our money for what we love. We have to spend our money for what loves us. And what that is different for each of us. But I don't get into broad spectrum conversations about Black people, because some Black people, I'm on the same frequency they're on. And that's part of going back to Dr. King and others. It wasn't like Dr. King was solely on that movement. That's what equality looks like. And so we can't dip one toe in equality and say, oh, we love it, and then run back and say, oh, but wait a minute. There's nothing unique. The same thing has happened. You named just movies, opera, rock and roll. There's theft that goes on every day. There's people who pervert it to make it what they want it to be for them. Money talks. And when people talk about, they give these phantom organizations all this power, the real power is the people that control your media and images. And now with social media and we have the opportunity to set a counter narrative and put those images out. Chris, you mentioned the Black bookstore. We have an opportunity. I was talking to Nick Cannon once, and it was around the whole Kaepernick taking a knee. And Nick had his one-person video team that was there. And I said, Nick, you realize in that 5-minute segment you did, it would have taken 500 civil rights buses to come and have the same impact on a global scale of what cost you nothing to do and took less than 5 minutes of your life. Remarkable. The power is here. We have to use it, and we have to use it and many times we use it at a loss. Not everything that I'm doing is for profit. So much of what I'm doing is for that other wealth, the wealth that makes even having profit and personal wealth worth it, because there could be some things. It's like you have all this wealth and you don't even want to be here. The highest percentage of suicides are people in the billionaire class. So you have more billionaires that commit suicide than any other demographic. Smaller numbers because it's a smaller percentile. It's a smaller segment of the population. But what is it that makes a person that their net worth goes from 7 billion to 5 billion that they can't live anymore? Like there's some real psychosis in how we act around money and what we perceive real wealth to be. And a lot of that's from internal, not external. So my dad would always say we have a big job, and there's no question that job probably has gotten more complicated with time, not easier.
Well, I think that's really astute. And, I'll go into old Uncle Chris storytelling time on a few different levels to address Nick's culture check here, because it's an interesting question. And then the second part of that, Nick, the question of should we reach out to them? What should we do? Well, the whole thing is this. It ties into what Christian said about technology and being sort of on that moving train, and you don't want to get left behind and be sort of, a 50-year-old that doesn't know how to open the doors to their car. And I remember interning at RJS Artists and Fat Sam Music Publishing, working with one of my business mentors, RJ Stillwell. And we managed a band named Trucker. And the lead singer of this band, his name is Jason Salzer, and he looks like Johnny Depp. And he was just sexy and young and all that stuff. And we had a great band. Why should I say we? He had a great band he was managing. And they did a meeting at Sony, as legend has it. And there was another band they were looking at. That band's name was Drive By Trucker. And Drive By Trucker had a regional following. They sold out shows in the region, whereas we were just selling out shows sort of in Nashville and Memphis. And so Sony went with Drive By Trucker. Drive By Trucker now is a multi-Grammy award-winning act, and they have a large fan base, and the rest is history. And I'm kind of being really reductionist about Drive By Trucker, like there's a lot more to tell. But just for the sake of the story, our band Trucker, after that, broke up. They all went and had their little families. And the reason I tell that story is because technology has created a situation where, and music industry has done this better than any other industry, so kudos to the music industry. They have removed the audience borders, right? When we came up, we had no access, for example, to Latin music. If you found it, you were really a audiophile. You were like, oh, I'm digging in the crates. I'm finding there were borders up around what music you could listen to. It would be really hard to find music from Spain or world music or things like that. We were all proud if we knew a couple of tracks off Bjork's album or someone from Africa. Like we were like, oh, we're in, we're on top of it. We're musicians. Now that's a silly conversation, because there's just no borders. So your fan base can be, all over the world, even though your music lives within sort of, let's say, the Black culture, right? So your job now as a creator, I think, is to go and find audience. And so as you create something that's different than the side chicks of LA, you have to also prove to the person with money that you can bring an audience with you. Because
and I think you should
do there's no border. Everybody can like what you like, and all that matters is that number on the screen on your analytics page that says how many people listen to me. We don't know what color they are. We don't know what gender they are. Those borders are all gone. But to your point, Nick, the content shows our faces like ours, and so therefore now that is a for us by us show where the audience might be 80% white,
right?
You know what I mean? Or might be 80% from Norway or New Zealand or from South Africa or Nigeria or wherever, or Brazil, like wherever. Like it's really, it's an interesting time we live in. So I guess the answer is yes, as long as you're able to drag an audience, a borderless, faceless audience in a lot of ways to you. Now, the thing is, once you have those numbers, can you form community around it? And that's where you start to get real people. Christian, you mentioned the Russian bots, who could have been any kind of bots running BLM in Baltimore. That's why when I was doing political activism around 07, 08, and part of like the presidential campaigns, I liked meetup groups because that was a person on the other end that you had to work with. And it was part technology, part real meeting.
Hybrid.
So if you organize something, yes, it's hybrid. So if you organize something, you knew who was organized and they showed up with you. So they had skin in the game too. So I just think it's kind of funny that
I know
you're talking about, Nick.
Yeah. And I know we're about to
know your leader.
I know we're about to jump into some things we should know in a second.
Yeah.
So Christian, I got one thing for you, because like I just don't want you to be surprised when you see this. So when we do this YouTube video, we always got to make sure we do the cover art, right, for the YouTube video. So I want to make sure that we're balancing things out, right? It's a counterculture, but at the same time, like you said, we got to be inviting, because we're all of these things. We're not one, right? We are the spectrum of things. So I just want to make sure that you understand that on the image, right, I will make sure that I'm like this, and there's a picture of a girl's booty right here next to it, right? And
that's the thumbnail. That's the thumbnail.
Exactly. That's the thumbnail
of this episode.
That's the clickbait.
Yeah, exactly. The
Christian,
clickbait.
I know you want to. I'm gonna let me before you say it.
On people.
No, Christian wants to say one more thing to this for sure, but that is what that was my thing. What Nick just said is the thing I'm talking about. There is an asymmetry in our culture, especially in the Black culture. It exists in other cultures. It exists in other places, but it's definitely true sort of in the maybe not Black culture, but maybe especially in the hip hop culture, in the younger culture. There's an asymmetry at play, and we don't really understand how to figure it out. So for example, recently we had the Drake and Kendrick Lamar beef, right? And I've always contended the big winner in this was J. Cole, because he had to take some very short-term shame for long-term freedom,
right?
From the drama and all of his, business being put on Front Street and all this other stuff. But there's an asymmetry at play, because what drove that up was the blogosphere, people like academics and others that want to be academics. They're driving the heat behind it. They're pushing it. Same thing happened with Tupac and Biggie when in the 90s. It was a media driven thing that these two people that they were forced to be pawns in their own movie. In a way, they were protagonists in their own movies, but were being driven, and this is kind of what Christian's saying about the dollar makes the agenda, driven by an entity even bigger than them towards their own demise. And I saw this play out, that the blogs and X/Twitter and social media and Instagram, they all wanted these guys to fight and fight and fight and fight. All the streamers, that are on Twitch, they want these guys to fight, the blogosphere. And so on one hand, you have these artists who want to make art, and what makes them money is creating hit songs. On the other hand, you have this other entity in the media, and some of them are even great, like Charlemagne the God of Love. He's done a great show. DJ Envy, they do a great show, but they have to admit that they make money through the proliferation of drama, and that creates an asymmetry between how these two entities make their money.
So if you were to go back and look at Phil Donahue, drama selling is in people exploiting people's pain, even when you do it with Dr. Phil, even when you do it with kindness. Hey, who would ever want a paternity test on national TV? Like some of these things, right. I mean, some of these things, it's just, again, the almighty dollar, the point that to speak about the kind of hip hop beef, and the fact that was surgeons in America that were chiming in is very horrifying. So like some of these things are unique to our culture. Like there's no reason that a 60-year-old surgeon should be talking about, Drake's beef. And so I assure you, if Jake Paul is fighting with whoever's the biggest on the country charts right now, someone's not scrubbing into the OR and being like, are you monitoring the beef? Some of these things, we have too much noise and static on our periphery. And it's really a disservice. And what I was going to say, part of it is we need to be entertained, because part of our pain that we still carry, we want to attach it to something else. Well, at least I'm not that. At least I'm not this. So we get caught up in stuff like, why would you ever even be, why would that even be? Why is this even on my timeline? So part of it, I have to blame the algorithm. But the other part is you can look, part of equality and part of post-racism is the luxury for someone to look like you, to do something, you not take it personal. That's not me. I don't care because we're not a color. Race is something that's made up. Culture is what we are, and culture is wide and diverse. I look at horrible things that Caucasian people do, and none of my Caucasian friends hold their head in shame. Like they're embarrassed by what that person did. And that's as we still scale and move towards equality, we won't be, and we all do it. If people are, you can listen to the news and cover your eyes, and just by what they said the person did, our mind, like, oh, I already know that person.
Right,
and the wonderful thing, it's starting to change. Like the one, because that's what if you want equality, it's full spectrum. It's not just, well, I only want equality in the boardroom. I don't want equality in the prisons and crime. Like if there's shouldn't be certain things that are like designer crimes for certain communities. I remember when carjacking was a very black thing till it wasn't. So these things kind of grow and morph and evolve, but that's what equality looks like. I would never be embarrassed by what some other black person does. Like and that's part of evolving out of that. And so otherwise you're setting yourself up for a world of hurt. You know who does this great? Africans that come to this country.
Right.
That's not me. And there's a reflection that we have to learn that. We have and the same thing when someone does something good. We're all guilty of it. You know, our black player wins the game. We did it. We did.
Right.
It's like I'm glad my team won, so a lot of that, and that's
the OJ project was like that, strangely.
A perfect example. Perfect example. So we can't internalize these things that are not, but again, as parents and people that we have young children in our world that look at us for how we respond, we have to teach them how to navigate those things and let them know that is not a reflection of you. And again, part of the beauty and diversity of our culture is it's omnipresent. It's America's number one export is black culture, not black people, our culture. And that was part of what we fought for, the acceptance that my dad's generation fought for, that acknowledge what we did. Don't just take our music and make it yours. I don't know if either of you saw some film shows. So I want to give a plug to Unfrosted because I was wildly entertained by that. But I don't know if either of you saw Elvis. I guess about a year old now.
I saw Elvis and Unfrosted.
Yeah, so win-win. I'm on with the right group of folks here. Yeah. Elvis, when I paused it in the middle, I had to look up who did it because it was one of the most, what me and my dad and what we built Dick Gregory Media for was to highlight black glamour. And that's what Hollywood is known for, glamour. Black folks didn't always get roped into that glamour part of Hollywood. That movie was so glamorous in its depiction of black people. And I wasn't shocked when I saw there was no black people that were part of it. Black glamour is not something that we're unique. Matter of fact, a lot of us, was it The Ugly Eight or the Western film that came out that Jay-Z and some others were attached
I thought you were talking about the Hateful Eight. That was, maybe about Quentin Tarantino's Hateful Eight? Or were you talking about the one with Adam Sandler where, no, not Adam Sandler. No, I know you're talking about Idris Elba.
With Idris Elba. Yeah, man, my dad had already passed away when that came out. But if my dad went to see a black Western and the opening scene was a black man shooting a white woman, a black man shooting a black woman at her dinner table, he would have got up and walked out. He would say, wait, we can't do better than this. This is the opening scene. When the movie Detroit was out, they reached out to my dad and I'm forgetting her name, Catherine Bigelow. I'm pronouncing her last name wrong. She directed that.
That's correct.
Her team reached out to me to get my dad to see where in the world I could sequester him so they could screen that movie because they were taking some incoming and they wanted to be able to have a black elder say it was okay. And it was 5 of us in this whole theater. When it was over, we all kind of huddled. And I won't say how colorful what he said, but he basically said, if y'all mother beeps weren't here, I would have walked out within the first 5 minutes. And I said, I was right there with you, Pop, but it wasn't, they didn't pay for my opinion. They paid for your opinion. And the reason was, here's this movie about white police corruption in Detroit in 1970. And the opening scene is a black police officer brutalizing white folks. It was like, wait a minute. So you've already qualified in this movie that this is an equal opportunity crime, and it's not. And so again, and that's part of the beauty of telling our own stories, because that may have seemed like a small thing, but to someone who doesn't understand our culture and is seeing that for the first time, it's like, oh, that it's just all of them are doing that, and it was not accurate. So my dad was more political than what people would give him credit for. I said, okay, Pop, how do you want to? There's 5 people that flew in with this film, because it was a physical film they flew in with, played it at the local DC AMC theater, and they were waiting for us to come out. Waiting for him to come out. What do you want to say? And he was mad. And I said, how about I just say, you are so moved that you don't have anything to say right now. We'll put something in writing later. And that's just what we did, because he would have went off the handles on him. And later he told me what he wanted. I put it in writing. We submit, and we trashed the film, because it's those type things can do real damage when you're sitting and you have folks 100 years from now, and we're talking about how hard it was. And they say, well, wait a minute. Most people, Malcolm X, all they know about Malcolm X is Spike Lee's movie. I love the film, but that's all they know. That's the power of film. So as storytellers, it's profoundly important that, okay, well, if we're going to do 5 films on Malcolm, I'm not going to be that particular about it. But if there's only going to be one, we have to get it right. So get it right is kind of a theme for us, Gregory's. Chase real dopamine, natural hygienic things, fast, get out into the sun, get out into the water, watch the leaves blow around, be a mammal. Sometimes we got to remind ourselves in this digital age the importance of spending some quality time with our inner mammal.
Yeah, men need to be reminded. They don't need to be told. And what you said about the movie sort of qualifying in the beginning, Nick, that is a lot closer to what I was trying to say to you. That was a lot more succinct in terms of, or closer to the image I wanted you to have in your head, which is, okay, you have this YouTube channel full of sort of tawdry stuff from the Black culture, but the people who are going to, so there's the asymmetry. The people who are going to make money from it will be in the most posh places in the world. They'll be at the Waldorf Astoria. They'll be they'll be dining at the finest places, wearing the finest suits. They'll be in the nicest cars. They'll be doing. They'll be at the Met Gala. They'll be showing Black culture in a very, very positive way. And they got there through this asymmetry of tawdry content on YouTube that was very successful.
Yeah, but we gotta jump to PB. But so this is the last thing that I want to say before we get there. Booty, rocking everywhere.
You say that a little too good, Nick. You say that a little too good.
I always tell him that.
Maybe I spent too much time on the YouTube channel today.
There was some additional reconnaissance done.
Right. Yeah, that's it. Wait, that's it. So if my wife sees me watching it, Booby, I'm just doing research.
Yeah, you have a folder called research.
Right.
You don't want to look in the research folder.
Right.
No, that's off limits. Don't put that one in the living will. Okay,
right now,
Papa Bear, give us the things we should know.
Let's do it. I'm excited.
There he is.
Hey guys.
Hey.
Me.
How's it going, Christian?
Excellent, Papa Bear.
All right. Well, here's the thing we should know. What 2 Black stand-up comedians, like Dick Gregory, were also civil rights activists, but preceded him by 2 and 3 decades.
Oh, geez. Wow. 2 and 3 decades before Dick
Gregory. Their career started
in before him. I guess there were, but not in his way. I know what you mean. I have some guesses, but anyway, go ahead, Papa Bear.
Their career started in the 20s for one of them, and in the 30s for the other.
Okay,
I'll take a stab at that, only because I've heard my dad speak so much about it. Okay. And I may be pronouncing some names, but Mom's Mabley. My dad would talk at length about some of her covert activism. I want to say it was Step and Fetch It, believe it or not. My dad, if my memory's serving me correctly, a lot of that was a facade that they put on, and because that was what that's what the audiences required or desired then. But a lot of what they did with their dollars spoke very differently. And back to that vote with your dollars. So my level of confidence on that, Papa Bear, is not high. But that is those are going to be my two responses to it. That's my final Jeopardy.
Okay, Nick, do you have two?
Absolutely not, man. I was like, as soon as he said it, I was thinking about people afterwards and like, what did they do? And then he said decades before. I was like, yeah, because Step and Fetch It. So okay, those are names that I know, right? But they're names that have to be triggered in my brain to bring them up, right? Even Mom's Mabley, and so it's like, but also, yeah, and also I didn't know enough about them. I mean, it was crazy. And then with the comedian side, I think that's really interesting too. I mean, of course, it's relevant to the conversation and to Dick, but it's not something that we learn about when we're younger either. So right. I literally have at least 2 or 3 to 4 books over here of famous African Americans who've done whatever they've done over the course of generations. But I bet you there's one, if any, comedians in any of those books.
Papa Bear, do you want to let Nick know it's okay not to have a final Jeopardy answer?
That's right.
He knows.
I'm gonna leave it. Yeah, I just leave it blank.
So I'll
but
tell you this.
Wait, Chris. When he said 2 African Americans, exactly. When he said 2 African Americans, I was like, oh, me and Chris.
That's it. That's the answer.
That's the answer. But go ahead, Chris. What you got, man?
Well, first of all, Christian brought this up earlier: African American versus Black. I've said that on this podcast before. That like basically powerful non-Black people created the term African American, and just like powerful non-Latina people have made Latinx, right? And then it's about consensus. And I was immediately reminded of the Doom line. Shout out to MF Doom, one of probably most underrated hip hop artists ever, maybe, along with Immortal Technique. He has a line that says he's no Afro-American. If so, he'd be a bald-headed African. Because he had no hair.
He had no hair, right?
What is this Afro? Because people will shorten it and say Afro-American.
Afro.
It's like, I'm not an Afro-American. I'm an American. If so, I'm a bald-headed African. This is great. So I had Step and Fetch It, Christian, as one. Even though, so this will be a yes and. Even though he wasn't a comedian, I want to guess different from you, Christian, just to broaden the pool, odds. Right? Since Nick provided nothing.
Hey, I'm just saying. I'm being honest. I didn't even go to the chat. Right? It'd be like, Joe, help me, Joe.
There you go. I'm gonna go Oscar Michaud. Okay.
Yeah, filmmaker
as a potential, also filmmaker, because Step and Fetch It was a comedian, but he did comedic acting. The yes and is actually mostly for Papa Bear, but it'll be fun for the audience and fun for everybody. Do you guys remember the actor Fatty Arbuckle?
I do not.
So do you remember Papa Bear? Fatty Arbuckle?
I do.
Yeah. So Fatty Arbuckle was one of the first stars of Hollywood, and he was a big sort of pratfall guy and just a big lumbering guy. And how he got his start was he was the plumber for D.W. Griffin, who was featured in our last Things We Should Know. And D.W. was really considered the god of Hollywood when he started. They would call him, like Hollywood god. And he had built these incredible sets and these things. And it's fascinating to learn about Hollywood between 1910 and 1930. But he needed a guy, and he signed up. He took this plumber who was making, back then, like if you made $2 a day, it was like, you're doing all right. He took Fatty Arbuckle from a plumbing guy to a superstar where he had a $3 million 3-year deal with Paramount in about a span of 5 years. And Fatty Arbuckle turned into sort of this undesirable plumber into this ladies' man and absolute coke fiend and alcoholic. He loved alcohol and drugs. And And it just goes to
Is this a
show
success
what
story?
money. No, it just goes to show what we were talking about before, like what success can do to you, abundance, that access to it, and how you have to have the wisdom. I was telling my family this earlier today. Read The Great Gatsby as you're older, and it's better. If you read it young, it's boring, and it's because you have the wisdom to know what's taking place. There's a lot of nuance in that book.
Absolutely.
And if you don't understand that through experience, the book is just boring. Like, what's the big deal? This guy had a lot of money. He was pretending to have the money.
As many things in life.
Right.
Papa Bear, you're no Alec Trebek, because folks have really hijacked this Final Jeopardy moment.
I know.
Yeah, he was waiting.
Thinking
He was
Chris
waiting.
was going to let us know that Fatty Arbuckle had invented the plumber's crack, but I guess not.
Right.
I'm learning all kinds of things here.
Yeah, well, he did say that he was on drugs, so you know,
crack. That's why they call it crack. Fatty Arbuckle. Shout out to Fatty Arbuckle.
Right. So our winner's going to have to be Christian, because he's got it at least half right.
I'll take it.
Mom's Mabley. Yep.
Oh, so it's not Step and Fetch It.
Her name was Loretta Mary Aiken, known as Jackie Moms Mabley. And the other is comedian and activist Willie Ashcan Jones.
Willie Ashcan
Jones.
Ashcan.
Have you noticed this, Christian, that like back in the day, everybody had like a nickname?
You had to, because most people remembered nicknames and they did anything else. So and a stage name, so they could do what they wanted to do at night and not be on the front of the newspaper. So that's a great point. It was very intentional.
Jewish community would almost always have a pseudonym, so people didn't know they were Jewish.
Oddly enough, a lot of people didn't know Richard Gregory and Dick Gregory was the same person. So my dad's IDs all were Richard Gregory, because that's who he was. Dick was his nickname. So there was levels of security in there. But I never heard it. So we're gonna have to put that one. You have to put a link to that. That's my homework right there.
Say the name. Say the second name again, Papa Bear, please.
Willie Ashcan Jones.
I'm going to write that down. Willie Ashcan Jones. Just try to find any baseball player before 1950 that didn't have a nickname. It's impossible.
Absolutely impossible. Yeah, impossible.
Willie Ashcan Jones. Papa Bear, you've done it once again. Yeah, this is a thing we should know.
It is. It is 100%.
It's absolutely
I'll know it next time I'm asked. That's the beauty of this platform.
Give me Mom's Mabel's real name again. You said Jacqueline? No, Loretta.
Well, yeah, she kind of went by Jackie.
Oh, Jackie. Okay.
Jackie Mabley, but her real birth name is Loretta Mary Aiken. Aiken.
Mary Aiken.
As long as we keep saying these people's names, we keep their legacy and memory alive. So I like this segment.
That's right.
Yeah.
Very powerful.
Thank you, Papa Bear. I appreciate
it.
Thank you, PB.
Thank you.
You're welcome. See you.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah, love the outfit there too. Looked like a high-end courier.
A mad high-end courier.
Well, he was delivering great information. So.
That's right.
Yeah.
He was
currying in that information.
That's right.
But that's actually, that outfit is like my set outfit. Like if I'm on set, like that's all I wear, all black and a hat. That's it.
You better make sure all day. Hey, make sure you mute that channel.
You're inspiring the team. You're inspiring the team.
That's it. Speaking of inspiration, man, we're inspired about some of the moves you've been making recently. Like,
that's right.
Can you talk about these new business ventures to the degree you can? I know there's NDAs, there's certain things you can't talk about, but can you talk about what you've been up to these last 5-10 years building these businesses?
Wait, and again, Christian, I'm sorry to cut you off, man. I have to do this to make sure that people understand. So Chris says some things sometimes. He uses acronyms that people don't understand. So I have to make sure that I tell people what these things are. So like he just said, NDA. And what NDA stands for is Negro, don't ask. Okay.
Now, Chris, you didn't tell me. You didn't tell me that why Nick had that backdrop behind him. I didn't realize he was the comedy relief. On the segment. So
I just let people know. That's all.
Gotta let people know what that means.
No, it's well, yes. Up to the truth is, my dad, from growing up on the farm, one of his things for people who would listen, it was always put a system together. Put a system together. His Bahamian diet was a system that he put together. When he lost the Bahamian diet, which was consumer packaged goods. Since I was 6 years old, I was working and doing research and development like a little guinea pig. All of us Gregorys were.
Mm-hmm.
We'd come home from school and there'd be 1,000 Dixie cups laid out, and I'd have vitamin C, vitamin D. You had to put 2 in 1 cup. That was we were the machinery. We were the co-packers. We were the manufacturing wing of the precursor to the Bahamian diet. And back then it was called the 4X formula. Literally, I was 6 years old in our kitchen, which was this massive kind of great room kind of space. This would have been the early 70s. A lot of people didn't know who then prisoner Nelson Mandela was. Had a huge 6 by 6 foot by 6 foot black and white poster of Nelson Mandela on the kitchen wall. So our kitchen really had become, a sweatshop, if you ask some, but it really the Gregory manufacturing wing of the house. Yeah. And the beauty and the reason I point that out is with time and over the years, in 1978, my dad ran cross country, running from Los Angeles, California to New York City, only consuming the ground up formula. The pills that we were separating was ground up into a powder, was the 4X formula. His business partner, my business partner now, John Bellamy, a gentleman by the name of John Bellamy, I've known since I was 6, came with the idea of, Dick, used to be 280 pounds. My dad was a massive man at one point. You've lost all this weight. We should turn the 4X formula into a weight loss product. And so those pills, us Gregory, those vitamins, we were ultimately evolved to be a beautiful golden canister, which I have right over my shoulder here, and became the Bahamian diet. Fast forward to Nelson Mandela being a prisoner whose black and white image was on the Gregory dining room wall, to my dad and I being in Pretoria, South Africa, presenting Dick Gregory's Bahamian diet to then President Nelson Mandela. And so the cycle, and that would have been in the 90s. Actually, I have it written down here. That would have been in the late 80s. And so for me, consumer packaged goods has been a space that us Gregorys have defaulted in our whole lifetime. You build brands, and this was long before we all became brands. Dick Gregory was a brand, and a lot of what he did that he called stunts, even the cross-country run, and a lot of the fasting he did, he would call them stunts because although they were rooted in good purpose, he was doing them with the intention to motivate others. And so, as with all folks who do stunts, Evel Knievel did a lot of stunts and had the broken bones to prove it. Dick Gregory had the equivalent of a lot of broken bones for all of I call my dad a stunt man out of respect. And so for me now to be putting a system together with my dad's business partner, and we're build at 3E, and the 3E, we're building brands on mission. And that mission is simple: clean air, clean water, clean soil. And so we don't get caught up in the carbon scrum, the global warming debate. I'm a scientist. I know what side I stand on that. But when it comes to the consumer packaged goods, not wanting to divide the consumer, clean air, clean water, clean soil. And the 3E stands for energy, environment, evolution. So we are, as a operations company, we are rolling up businesses that are like-minded. Some of the biggest names and brands that are, we have 2 channels. We have food, farm to pantry and farm to freezer. And some of the biggest names that are out there, we're rolling up and telling their story in a more kind of ESG sustainability way than they've been able to tell it. And we have an entire division that is committed to sustainability and eco-friendly technologies. And so it's called Zoetic Global. So Zoetic Global, we're utilizing their technology to tap into other current brands, bring down we say carbon footprint, but really it's what we call earth impact. And so, because carbon only looks at your atmospheric impact and footprint, it doesn't look at waterways, and it doesn't look at soil diversity. So we're looking at everything from seed to when it gets to your home, and we're using our technology to be able to make these things better for the planet. And there's a big difference. You referenced earlier my dad doing the Nike commercial, and what Nike asked my dad to do. Nike had under contract Kevin Durant and LeBron James, and LeBron James was known as the best. They asked my dad to come in and to basically explain the difference between the best, and KD was known as the baddest. So they brought in the baddest brother they could find to say why it's better to be the baddest than it is to be the best. And so my take on that over at 3E is making the difference between best for you and better for you. Best for you is not sustainable. Everyone cannot, reach a level of what's best. Better, because better for you, it's equally better for the environment. For instance, the best breakfast for you may require quail eggs being flown in from London. Well, obviously that has a huge carbon footprint. So if you take a step down from best to better and put that on equal billing as better for the planet, that's what 3E is. We're finding that sweet spot of finding what's better for you, better for because they're not synonymous. A lot of things that we enjoy doing that may be healthy for us are not healthy for others in the environment. And a lot of times as a retired chiropractor, I point out, you may not smoke cigarettes, but if you're flying in an airplane and everyone else is smoking cigarettes, you smoke cigarettes. Don't just focus on what you're doing for you without taking care of the environment and future generations and what we're going to leave behind. So my dad was an environmentalist. And in 1939, it's what they call Black Tuesday, just outside of downtown St. Louis, they were illegally burning cheap coal. And the smog was so intense that for almost 3 weeks, the sun didn't come out. And little 9-year-old Dick Gregory was so scarred by that, so much so that my dad's biopic, we're considering it, calling it Black Snow, because he remembers that October, November, black snowfall coming down, and it literally was black from the soot. So part of his desire to move us to an organic farm in Plymouth, Massachusetts, was to get as far away from that memory that scarred him. And anyone that had deep, meaningful conversations with my dad, he would often bring that up, just about how that really impacted him more. Here it was 1930s, Jim Crow, segregated, and he was more scarred by what was happening to the earth in the sky, in his environment, and the sun not coming out, than some of the stories he had about racism and poverty. So it just shows how powerful we look at what's happened in Flint, Michigan. We look at what's happening in a lot of urban areas where there's manufacturing plants that wouldn't be put in other communities or neighborhoods. We look at what they call iPhone City in China, where there's like a 80% increase in metastatic cancers. It's like all of this, there's an ugly side to all of this, and there's no free lunches with the ecosystem. You either take care of it or you don't. And so I say this to people all the time, and they think I'm crazy. I say, I love greenhouse gases. Without greenhouse gases, we couldn't live on this planet. The greenhouse gas is the thermostat that regulates Earth's temperature. So when we just take a blanket statement like all greenhouse gas is bad, that's not accurate. Again, blankets are good. If I put 1 million blankets on you at night, you're not going to wake up. And so that's what we're doing. We're not calibrating what we're emitting into the waterways. We're finding fish and that have higher amounts of erectile dysfunction medication than any human was ever meant to find, because what we excrete goes into the waterway, and it's the half-life of this stuff is much longer than the time it takes for the run through our sewage system to get out into the water table. So there's a lot. And the other thing is, so many of us, and now that I'm deep in this, consumer packaged goods space, I see it firsthand. There's a lot of bias. There's a lot of elitism. Everyone can't go to Whole Foods. Everyone can't go to Sprouts. We have to take good quality, whole food, natural products. They still need to take delicious. I'm not trying to take all the joy out of your life, but take all the stuff. If I drink we're currently going through the modern day soda war. So it's like Pepsi and Coca-Cola, but it's Olipop and Poppy. And it's a beautiful thing because they both use real ingredients. So the winner of that is us. So if you drink soda, you should have a right to drink something. And you say, hey, you know what? This is fattening. Well, I can go to the gym and work that off. But all the other 9-syllable ingredients that are in a Coke or a Pepsi that are cancer causing, I can't go. So a soda I drink today shouldn't have me with prostate cancer 20 years from now. And so clawing all of that back. And when people say to me, I have no idea how I've got this complicated cancer diagnosis, that give me 24 hours to follow you around and I can tell you everything that you're doing as part of your routine. When I get into a Lyft or an Uber and I see 75 air fresheners, I'll point in the car. That's cancer. Like fresh air doesn't come on a cardboard in the shape of a tree. It comes from rolling the window down. It doesn't come from a can of chemicals, but it's we've been bred. Oh boy, obey your thirst, drink Sprite. Drink water. The cells in the body are hydrated by water and water only, and you can get your water in other forms. But the advertising and marketing has convinced us that nutrient density doesn't matter, when in fact it does. The body, we're the only mammal that drinks something other than water. So, and that's learned behavior. And when you look at the sickness and disease, you look at increasing your health span, not your lifespan. Increasing lifespans is reckless. There's a whole movement in medicine to stop using that verbiage. Like, if you're going to be in a nursing home from 5 years, now we're going to extend it to 20 years, and you're not getting out of bed. Where's the sustainability? Where's the fairness in that to future generations? So Rahm Emanuel's brother, Ezekiel, I believe his name, and the doctor, he's part of a growing movement in medicine of doctors that say after the age of 75, they're not going to take any medication, because they realize if prolonging vital signs is not living. So you want to start making decisions now to start increasing your health span, not focusing on your lifespan. Western medicine's good. We can maintain vital signs. Grandma hasn't left her room in 20 years, but grandma's alive. So that's all and that's and many times if grandma was of conscious mind, she or grandpa, they would say, this is not living. So that decision is ours as individuals, but in fairness, we should allow people to know it's the decisions you make now that impact you 10 or 20 years from now. When I go into the gym, especially when I'm traveling, I see folks who are 50, 60 years old still working out like they're trying to go out for the football team tomorrow. And I just shake my head. I say, all those replace knees, replace hips, all that is forever chemicals on both sides. We're talking about the human body being filled with forever chemicals. Well, a lot of the things we put in our mouth to make our teeth white and make our teeth straight, it's all plastic. It's all nanoplastics. And the lining that we put on hip replacements and knee replacements, you're filled with forever chemicals. So if you have to do it, do it. But the best thing is 10 years before you need a hip or knee replacement, change your behavior. So my message now is I'm out lecturing and advising and consulting. Work out and live your life for the person you don't want to be now, but you want to be 10 years from now, 20 years from now. Look at the blue zones. Look at they're doing Tai Chi. They're doing low impact things. They're swimming. I still have folks my age who are doing, powerlifting and bodybuilding. And it's like some of the bodybuilders I grew up, idolizing are in wheelchairs now, and they're like my age.
Yeah, Ronnie Coleman.
So it's that, and it's that balance, not allowing media to tell us what the face and look of health is. Some of your listeners aren't going to want to hear this, but some of my sickest patients were vegans and vegetarians, not because they were vegans and vegetarians, but they were doing it wrong. They're starchitarians. All they're eating is carbs. They've took the plate. Replacing healthy protein is very expensive and difficult to do. And most of them just say, well, I'm not going to eat meat. They get rid of the protein, but they're not replacing it with a healthier plant-based protein. And then when they do, they go and get an Impossible burger that's impossible to be healthy because it's got 75 ingredients in it. So the learned behavior, because I tell people all the time, natural is not synonymous with good for you. Heroin's natural, cocaine's natural. So just because something's natural doesn't mean it's good for you. And so we're having fun building a system like my dad, a multi-focused healthcare delivery system through foods, through foods that everyone can afford, everyone can have access to. We spend more time getting our products aligned for a Walmart customer than we do from a Whole Foods customer. So even with our energy drink 3E, and 3E has a big brother, I'll say a big sister since I have 7 big sisters, has a big sister coming soon, healthy, better for you soda, that it is So some people say, well, don't we want people not to drink soda? I want you to drink or eat whatever you want to do. I want to give you a healthier version of it. My job's not to be the nanny police waving my finger. It's to give you healthy options. We can save a lot more people by giving them healthier versions of what they want than trying to force everyone to eat and live their life like Dick Gregory did. History has already shown that's not going to happen. So 3E, energy, environment, evolution. We call ourselves, we're building brands on mission, and we're still activists. We're activists for people, the planet, and for brands. So the shout out to 3E and to you all being part of this movement over at Make It. So Make It 3E. We need to get a tagline on there.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there a time where you think this will be like, and if you don't know, that's okay, but is there like a known sort of timeline for when this will be sort of ubiquitous across grocery or maybe like in markets or wherever, or is this going to be more like a B2C play where people have to order it online and ship it?
It'll be omnipresent. So many of the brands we're in the process of rolling up now are everywhere. They're brands that are everywhere that you're already consuming. And what we're looking for are things that are real food, real ingredients. The sugar, the no sugar movement was a fail. Sugar is one of the most nutrient dense food forms. It's just we're giving people too much of it, and the source of sugar matters. So organic cane sugar is something it's damn near a superfood. So when you take sugar out of an energy drink, you have to use like 3 or 4 times the amount of fake caffeine to synthetic caffeine to make up for the sugar. So we have, during America's zero sugar, zero calorie movement, calories are nutrients. We don't want 0 calories. We want good calories. But during that movement, America's become fatter, sicker, more diabetics, more diabetes, more diabetes, more obesity. So we're and that's what Poppy and Olipop's doing. They're saying, we're using real sugar. Like real sugar was fine. It was fine for our great grandparents. And if you think back to the original day of sodas, when you used to go to the pharmacy and there was a soda jerk and soda was a help. You took a certain soda if you had a headache. You took a Dr. Pepper if your stomach was upset. That's what. So we're getting back to the future. Absolutely, we're getting back to the future with the soda that we're coming out with. And so, to answer your question, January 1st, 3E will roll out nationally. Our soda, that name is Tight Under Wraps, will roll out nationally. So next year, and all of the brands, because the goal here is to take 3E and be a publicly traded company within the next 12 months to 48 months. So it's a great team. I never thought I'd have so many people working for me in my life. Working with me, let me correct it, because I already said I'm the work ethic one in the family. So there's no job that's beneath me and no job that's too difficult for me to do. And my partner, John, and I, we like to lead by example. So I hope people like the name because it's going to be omnipresent here in the very short future. And the sales agency we bought, the sole purpose for that is some of the best products in the world never find their way onto the shelf. And you recently may have saw where Snoop Dogg and Master P were suing Walmart and some others because their cereal wasn't getting on shelves. And I know this from our cracker line. Manufacturers are great at getting things into the store level. It kind of becomes your responsibility to hire the brokerage firms that go in and get your product and make sure the right tag. And if you follow me online, you'll see I'm all through Texas fixing our cans, making sure our sale tags are right. And I won't have, most people that own a brand don't do that. I want to do it because I want to be 10 toes down so I can explain to others that this isn't launching a brand is not an easy process. And the folks that look at the folks who quickly come out, get an influencer, and it blows up overnight. Prime's a great example of why that's not always the best thing you want. It went from being the number one to now they can't give it away. So, there's lots of great examples. We talked about Unfrosted. So we look at what Post and Kellogg's has done. We look at the things that have been household names, whether you agree or disagree with what they're producing, but the stability came because they didn't do a one-off stunt to trick you into something. And then when you got it, there's no there. So there has to be something proprietary, something special, something different in what you're packaging up to help you to set yourself apart from the others. But if you don't get on shelves, my dad would always say Nat King Cole had a brother who could sing circles around him, and everyone would say, "Oh, really? What was his name?" He'd say, "Exactly." The talent is part of the equation. Being able to package yourself, being workable, being likable, and understanding the business side of it is what separates folks who are successful from folks who are not successful. So we plan for this brand and the work we're doing to outlive us all. And part of what we purchased is a carbon measurement tool called EnviroVision that's going to allow us to put what we call an earth facts panel on all consumer goods. So just like it took 21 years to get the nutrition fact panel as we know it on products. We're hoping to do it in under 5 years. We're planning to spend the resources on getting the right public policy groups behind it. But what we're doing is ideally through our sales agency, we'll have access and control over about 200 consumer packaged good brands. So we'll be all of those brands will be the early adopters of this new technology. And Walmart has their project Gigaton, where they've vowed to remove a gigaton of carbon out of the atmosphere. They're loving brands like what 3E is doing because we're going to balance out their carbon balance sheet. So for the big brands that can't bring their carbon numbers down, to have 4 or 5 brands that are carbon negative, or like our cracker line is 5 times carbon negative, will really be, and we're through consumer packaged goods, we're in the carbon offset business. So it's an exciting time. And as we break news and we break new brands that we're rolling out, I'd always like to consider the Make It podcast as an opportunity to break some of that news. I like breaking news with family. So
yeah, we appreciate that, man.
Keep you on that list, Nick and Chris.
Oh, always. We appreciate it, man. And I think you're so much aligned. I mean, that's why it's his family, right? We're so much aligned in our principles about what we're trying to do for the world. Right. And I think that, so I think that we are at the center of what we do, right? We enjoy being the voices and the faces for some of this, but we're the voices and the faces for the community at large. So it is perfectly aligned with what we do, man. And we appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Thank you both so much. This is always fun.
It always is. Is there any, not just fun, just inspirational, educational as well? Is there anything you want to leave our audience with? Any words of wisdom, any advice, any other breaking news about films, docs, anything like that? Whatever. Dealer's choice here.
So I'd like to go back to what we started with. We're all, in a sense, we're all storytellers. You go out to eat these days, the chef, the pastry chef, the owner. When I was young, you didn't. You just went to a restaurant because it was there. Mm-hmm. So what's this restaurant story? Oh, well, they get their vanilla from Madagascar. When I was a kid, no one even knew where Madagascar was, let alone vanilla. So the storytelling, but I know it sounds much better to say that. And so the storytelling aspect, every consumer brand now has to be able to tell their story. Younger generations spend more time researching, not on Google, but on TikTok. And so, again, we're going back to cave drawings in a sense, in a good way, digital cave drawings, because we can communicate with emojis and icons and dances. Someone can look at a Chinese TikToker do something in Mandarin Chinese and judge by the emojis at the bottom of the screen and the facial expressions that, hey, this is funny. It's making all of humanity come back to understand things on more of a singular level. And my dad would always say that at some point, I didn't think it would be in my lifetime, that reading and writing would become almost obsolete. As crazy as that sounded then, it seems like, and so that'll level the playing field. So there'll be no such thing as, oh, you went to a good school, you went to a bad school. We'll be able to level that out, and people will have access and be able to learn, and they'll have the assistance of, well, I don't need a tutor if I have machine learning right by my side. I have my tutor. So technology, we shouldn't be so quick to, sure, we need to monitor it. As I mentioned, AI is our ancestors. Well, which ancestors do we want out there that are doing the training? And so I think it's important to embrace these things, to understand them, really to understand them, and understand that also a lot of the people who are doing a lot of this breakthrough work, we don't have to like them. I listen to all the people and the angst and dislike of, say, someone like Elon Musk, who I personally think is a genius. A lot of geniuses I don't like, and in history, and if you were to go back in history, a lot of geniuses have certain ways about them and certain airs that if we found out today that Dr. Heimler was a horrible human being, would you not use his procedure to save your choking child? Of course not. We get too caught up in especially now, because if Dr. Heimler was alive now, he'd be doing TikTok. So we know these people now. So sometimes it's good to separate. There's people, I drive a Tesla because it's literally the same. I don't need to debate it. Like, I have 40,000 Americans die every year in automobile accidents. Most of my career, I took care of people who were injured severely in accidents, whether as pedestrians or in vehicles. I know for a fact the technology is a quantum leap safer. But because there's a movement against the founder, you go on platforms that are also owned by that same founder and attack certain aspects of what that founder owns. The adults need to come back into the room. We need to recalibrate things. And my dad always said about, whenever there was a white police officer that killed a black unarmed person, my dad would say, we need to create some type of insurance that officers must need to maintain to be able to carry a gun and to be in law enforcement, and say, do you hate me more than you love your family? I would say to folks, do you hate certain innovators more than you love your family? I want to be in the safest vehicle. I want to be with the safest technology. I want to be part of something that's disproportionately going to preserve my life and the lives of the others around me, because I work hard and I can afford it. Part of that is working hard to bring it down to a price point where everyone can. Chris, I know you're an EV guy as well, and not all EVs are created equal. And EVs aren't the holy grail. Like, they emit a lot of things. It just shows we're willing to think outside the box and start moving in a direction that's different. When we soon have a 10,000 mile battery that you're charging twice a year, we'll hit that sweet spot where, an ICE internal combustion engine no longer makes sense. And an EV, whenever that is for you, I didn't get upset with folks who still wanted to have a landline and didn't want to jump over to a wireless community. Do it when it works for you. But I'm always going to be an early adopter, because I know that with that technology, there's strengths and weaknesses, and understanding it's profoundly important. So I would tell folks, I'll end on a movie note. The movie Greenland. I'm sure both of you seen it. That the opening scene, father and son in the store, and they get the alert that they've been selected to head to the government facility to get, it's their bug out plan. They bought the bug out insurance that when this spaceship we call Earth is no longer hospitable for humans and we need to go, whether it's a SpaceX ticket that you bought for your family, the tension between the folks who paid attention, understood the technology, and were part of the bug out team, and that movie, probably better than any other movie, really depicts the reason that it's profoundly important that we stay plugged in. We don't just become useless consumers, eat high amounts of horrible foods for the body. And one of the main ways you won't be able to bug out, if you can't get up and move. You think at 9/11, a lot of people weren't able to run down the stairs and get out of the building just because they lost that. It wasn't because they were old. They lost that function of their bodies. So my message would be to take better care of yourselves. My dad would always say, we have a big job. We have a big job to do. And that job, as I talk to the three of you and the two, well, three, because Papa Bear's here too, and you're listening.
And producer Joe is on.
And producer Joe.
Producer Joe in the background helping us out.
To lead by example. There's no better way to inspire people than to continue doing what we're doing, to lead by example and have fun doing it. But I can tell you right now, it's no fun when your body starts to break down on you. So take good care of your mind, body, and soul, and stay tuned. 3E has a lot of tools that are coming up here soon, from wearable rings, biofeedback, tools to help you meditate. There's a lot of different areas that we're getting into, because I realize some people weren't raised like my dad and mom raised us, meditating and fasting. So I like to know my legacy before I check out will be providing the tools for people to balance out and have that hybrid of technology, digital and analog, that healthy balance. And the first part of that healthy balance comes with understanding. So again, in my dad's footsteps, it's continuing the legacy of being a master teacher.
There it is. By the way, if you want to teach some folks that are listening and they want to continue with you, where can they find you on social media? Where can they find you on the internet? Where can they buy some of the books? Can you lead us?
Dr. Christian Gregory on all of my social media channels, Dr. Christian Gregory, and any of the verified Dick Gregory channels, all of them I still manage. And so but Dr. Christian Gregory, I'm most active on Instagram because that's where most of my audience that I speak to is. Believe it or not, as a grown man surrounded by folks dancing all day long, I haven't taken the leap onto TikTok, but my businesses are on TikTok and no one wants to see me dance anyway. So, and I know TikTok's way more than just dancing. I'm teasing, but it is. But Dr. Christian Gregory on Instagram, and there's links there to everything from there. And I just thank both of you for what you're doing and for the opportunity to come here and plant seeds and share and give all of the wealth of knowledge and just the abundance that I was fortunate enough to be raised in.
I love it. And I really appreciate you. And the last bit reminded me of old Carl Sagan quote. He said, we might have a generation or a population of people who use the science and technology that's created and not understand. I don't think this is the quote exactly, but the sense of it was, and not understand how it was made. And when that goes on long enough, there'll be a collapse of some sort. So I think it's really important to understand at least a little bit what you're consuming, whether it be technology or science or why things work and how they work. Things like that, I think, are super important.
Reclaim your dopamine. There's a lot of dopamine thieves out here. Put a padlock on your dopamine.
You got that right.
And stop giving it to everyone. I know world-renowned celebrities that get caught up on likes. I'm like, you're really looking at likes, and so powerful stuff. Dopamine's a drug, and drugs are the great equalizer, and there's no better drugstore in the world than the one that resides right inside of this brain. So take care of your mind, body, and soul, folks.
That's right. That's right. And if you want to continue to take care of your mind, body, and soul, you know where to find us. Make It Podcast on YouTube. Make It Podcast on Apple and Spotify. Do join us there. On the audio side, we do it a little differently. We have Bodega Sync artists that we promote. These are independent musicians that are doing their own hustle, their own grind, scratching and clawing to get more exposure. So do support them on the audio side. The good news is, and I got this week, shout out to Randall Foster, that we should have those artists whitelisted on YouTube soon. And so we'll be able to promote those artists on YouTube as well and just kind of simplify the whole thing for the audience. So no matter where you enjoy this podcast, learn from it, get inspired by it, you will get the same product. It is a little bit wonky to have two different products out there, two different sort of expressions of this, but it's just slightly different. It's not a huge deal. So YouTube, Spotify, Apple, you can check us out there. If you want to find us on social media, that couldn't be easier. Almost every place we are _ Make It Podcast. So that's Instagram, X, TikTok. You can find us there at _ Make It Podcast. Give us a follow, like, and support us there. If you go to www.bonsai.film/subscribe, you will find our newsletter, Indie Insights. We love our newsletter. It comes out every 2 weeks. We put our heart and soul into this thing. We try to make sure it's a sort of a unique expression of everything me and Nick and the rest of the team are. We all work on it together, and we really love this thing. It's absolutely free. Put your email in there, and we will present you with a lovely little gift called Movie Money, right? Free ebook, authored by the one and only, again, Nicholas Buggs. Thank you, Nick, for providing that. It's the bomb. People are loving it. It's called Movie Money. We'll give it to you for free. Movie Money, just to quickly sum it up, is all these different ways, 42, something like, isn't that right, Nick? 42 different ways you can fund your film. It's completely free. All it costs you is your email. And on top of that, you'll get our work for free that we do in our newsletter. And we put our heart and soul into that. Last but not least, if you want to reach out to Nick and talk to him about this hat he's wearing, you can do that at nick@bonsai.film. The hat was not my idea. And no, it is not made of cork. Again, that's nick@bonsai.film. You can find him there. It's an email address. Or you can find him on Instagram on They Call Me Mr. Bugs. I believe that's your handle, right? And then if you want to reach out to me, I am at Flame in Your Heart on X/Twitter. Your is spelled UR, so Flame in Your Heart. And actually, I think if you just search Chris Barkley, I will just come right up. So drop me a line there. We respond to 100% of all these messages. So with that, Nick, can you please leave us with the credo?
I say that in a deep breath, man. That was, you went Christian on me there, man. He was rolling it out like, boom, I know my stuff. I don't need to look at anything. Right. I love it. Well, I want to say that I will take one thing away from Christians, multiple things, of course. But one of the things that I'm going to use now that was derived from what you said earlier is you can't burn it off if you can't spell it.
Yep.
So watch what you eat, folks. And with that,
I like that.
Yeah. So with that, to our friends, our family, our fans, and our followers out there, we always say, be better, be creative, be engaged.
And thank you for listening. Nick, Christian, talk to you soon.
Take good care. Thank you.
All right, gents, y'all take it easy.
I really enjoyed it.
Peace.